Hi, Martin. Good to speak to you.
You too,
Um,
Steve.
at your studio location. We're in the
My
secret, secret studio location, of course.
yeah, my
Um,
man cave here.
well, we all love our man caves.
Yours looks like a really seedy place.
Thank you.
I don't know. That looks like a nightclub at 4 a.m. somewhere in the wrong part of town. But
I can change the color scheme. It could be done. First of all, obviously, we were talking off air, and you're well, which is the main thing, and your health is good. Yeah, but it's such a worrying time, Martin, isn't it?
It's a very strange time. I don't know where you begin. It first began to affect me when I was in about a month or so ago. I was on tour in Canada, and I just about finished my Canadian dates, and I had to go to America to tour. And my wife Justine was flying over to join me for that. And the way things were going, I didn't know if my tour was going to get pulled, but I thought that some borders might get closed. So Justine came to the East Coast to just so we could be on the same continent, then I could at least, get to her. And then literally within about 3 days, all the US dates were cancelled. So I flew home from Vancouver. She flew back from Philadelphia, and we met together at Heathrow. So it was a complete waste of time. So yes, it's incredibly strange days. And in some ways we're very polarized because we're all dealing with our own situations. So I try to each day have good thoughts for people, like a big family living in a small flat, for instance, simple as that. People who can't have access to, where I live, unfortunately, I can go outside and not really see any other people and go for a decent walk. Not everyone has that.
No.
But it's affecting everything from finance to our well-being in terms of mental health. People with mental health problems right now, and I'm sure it's incredibly difficult. So there are just wide-ranging consequences for this. Plus, when we come out of this, it's going to be more than interesting. So it's strange times.
Which we'll hint at with the song a bit later on, of course. The idea of coming out the other side, which we will at some stage. I mean, obviously, these are unprecedented times. I know it's an overused phrase, but it's absolutely true. We've never lived through this kind of situation before. No. Hopefully, we never will again. People are dying and people are ill, and it's it's serious ramifications, tragic ramifications. But in terms of you as a kind of professional touring musician, I mean, I saw some of your stuff when you were out there in in North America and the snow and this, that, and the other, and it was at that time you didn't know how it was going to work out. But what's the kind of impact on people? And obviously you can't play live. But what's kind of is there any significant impact from this on you as a musician in terms of your presence and trying to keep your brand out there and keeping your identity going?
Those sort of things are kind of secondary in terms of my identity and my brand. I know what you're saying. What I'm trying to say is that for most musicians, it's a question of finance right now, because those of us who rely on the live concert market to pay our bills, that's been taken away. Not only that, I had, I think, 10 festivals this year all in the UK. For once, I wasn't going to America to play festivals, and every single one is cancelled. So it means that at the moment I have no income until whenever this ends and we can get out there and do something, But so there are those implications. I'm kind of fortunate a little bit in that I do a big UK tour at the end of the year, and then beginning of the year sort of goes through from November through to beginning of February. So I've done a big tour, plus I managed to get quite a few Canadian dates, but I know some other musicians who've just poured all their money into making a new album and we're about to release that and start a tour. And of course, so they don't have any hay in the barn, as it were, So, and streaming royalties are just so pathetic for most people that makes no difference. So so it's a great time if you love certain musicians, to support them if you possibly can. I mean, a lot of people are doing these online concerts. I've done one so far. It was with an organization in Philadelphia that I was supposed to play, and they asked if I would do a gig for them. So I did that one, and I'm actually doing another one this coming Sunday. But a lot of I'm trying not to do too many, because I realize there are probably some artists out there who need to do a lot of those right now, and there's a danger that we all flood this marketplace and everyone gets too consumed and turned off by it. So just trying to do those sort of things to keep things afloat. But so those are the implications for me. What it does do, Steve, I'm sorry to give you a long answer to this, is that it gives me something that I've actually longed for a long time, which is downtime. I've said I can't count the times I've sort of said, gosh, if someone could just give me X amount of money that I could put in the bank, and I could take 6 months off to read books and just, breathe and just inspire, rather than just going right here, there, this interview, then we're off to there, and I've got to make that recording, then we've got to, so that's the inherent blessing, as it were, for me right now, is that I'm suddenly, now that I've caught up on a few chores, suddenly I can wake up and think, what am I going to do today? And I that's not something I'm used to.
I mean, chores is a word that always worries me, but I mean, I have a daily list, that I may get on with some of them later. But just out of interest, you do a lot of reading. What are you actually currently reading?
I just finished a great book called The Gentleman in Moscow, which was a great read based around Russian history of an aristocrat that gets sentenced to spend the rest of his days in the Metropolitan Hotel in the middle of Moscow. That was a great read. I'm reading a book called it's about a hockey team in Beartown. I forget, he's one of my favorite authors, and it's gone. But I'm also reading a lot of poetry.
Oh, right.
I've been reading a lot of R.S. Thomas, and there's an American poet who's one of my absolute favorites, called Mary Oliver, who's such an upbeat. Every poem she reads just moves me. So I try to read a few of those every day and see where that leads me in terms of go into my lyric book and that sort of stuff. But
because that's interesting.
And then I'm reading. And I read, music biographies a lot, and Mojos and Uncuts and all that sort of stuff. So those sort of things. But I've always got a few novels on the go, reading and not writing them.
Well, it must be. There probably is a book in there somewhere. Maybe. Interesting that what you said there, Martyn, about
sorry,
kind of
us against them. That's the name of the book.
Okay, well done.
Us against them.
I forget everything. So I just finished that. Talking about Uncut, I just finished that book by Alan Jones. Can't Stand Up for Falling Down, which is a collection of articles that he wrote for Melody Maker over the years. What's lovely about that is absolutely, it's probably the most enjoyable book that I can remember reading for years. And afterwards, I sent him cheeky friend request, which he's accepted, and I'm hoping to be able to interview him. And he went on to edit Uncut, which of course you mentioned.
Of course. Actually, there's in that light. Stay there.
Yep. Is it a book coming out?
Got this
there
one.
It is. Right. Okay.
By Mark Ratcliffe, who's a pal. Crossroads, where he goes on this complete journey through his sort of history of him getting to grips with the whole music scene and everything. And I think it's a great introduction if you wanted a sort of quick read on the history of important music. This is pretty cool.
That's great. I'll have to read that one. That looks a great one. Similarly, the McConey stuff is great.
Stuart's great too.
But talking about what was interesting there when you said about poetry, I mean, poetry is one of those things which I've always found over the years is kind of almost like a forgotten cousin of songwriting. It's not sort of treated in the same kind of way. It's not an immediate source that people go to, but there's a big parallel, isn't there, between poetry and lyricism and songwriting?
Oh, I think so, especially at the end of the I don't know what you call it, the market. If you're trying to write something that's really meaningful, I think, and uplifting and that can, you know, there are so many beautiful anecdotes about poetry, but it can really, you know, I can sit out right now and read, as I said, Mary Oliver is one of my, and she will transcend the moment for me. You know, something, there is an ability to really take me out of my current situation and put me in a different place of wisdom, not just not entertainment, but wisdom. You know, of uplifting, maybe spiritual, whatever it might be. It just takes you to a time of reflection, and I suppose for those of us who are trying to write that sort of lyric, other than just some commercial thing to sell, then there's a wealth that can never be plundered of inspiration and information too. Often when I'm in the middle of a lyric and I'm just looking for something, I have a shelf up here in my studio with various books of inspiration. You know, I've got my original Dylan Thomas book there. You know, great quotes from Springsteen, these sort of things, you know, and so I'll often pick up the Dylan Thomas book and I'll just literally open it and I'll just read a paragraph, and it's not that I will take a line from it, but the lines will take me to a thought in my head in connection with what I'm doing.
Yes,
that will just come up with something, and I might take two of the words and suddenly put them in, and suddenly you know. So poetry is, for me, is a vital part of my daily bread.
Yeah. I mean, think about people like you know, kind of Dylan and Springsteen and these kind of storytelling songwriters. I know you're a massive Springsteen fan. Have you? I think he's done some live online stuff as well. I've never actually asked you much about kind of your taste in music, but maybe you could just tell us a little bit about Springsteen and why Springsteen means so much to you.
Well, I see Bruce as if music is a church, then Bruce is an elder. You know, he sits up there on the big chair, and people should be both weary and delighted by his presence, because he has constantly, for me, been a voice that somehow spoke into the narrative of how I felt, I suppose. That's when I try to write down some words, and there's going to be a song, whatever it is. I'm really trying to do things on different levels. I'm writing for myself because initially it's probably a selfish thing, but very, very quickly it becomes more of a community type thing. I'm thinking, well, how are people going to hear this? How will this help? You know, all that sort of stuff. And Bruce is the guy that's done that for me most consistently. There are the many artists that I love and listen to, obviously, but I just admire, you know, his canon of work has such integrity. I feel he has an integrity as a human soul. There's a vulnerability to his work. There's a great honesty to his work, and it encapsulates everything that I'm looking for when I'm looking to be inspired or moved, uplifted, comforted, or all of those things. And he's just a fantastic songwriter, and for me, again, what I'm trying to do, he gets better and better. There's no resting on the greatest hits and the laurels. He's constantly re-evolving, doing this thing on Broadway, the Western Stars album that just came out. It's all fantastic work, and one day we're going to look back and be even more grateful for his input.
Yes, and also he has that. I mean, I particularly like his stuff where it's just him and an acoustic guitar, actually. But I suppose that's kind of me. I like that.
Well, there's a very translucent sort of atmosphere that goes towards that, because, you know, I can record songs and you go into the studio and you beef them up and you do everything you can to make them be big and there and present and whatever they need to make them. But then you go back an hour later, or a couple of days later rather, and you just play that song on your guitar, and you realize that it has to be that way in some ways, but something is lost from the sheer intimacy and the sheer nakedness, as it were, of just that one guitar and the vocal that presents the song in a different room, in a different light, in a different landscape.
But I mean, when you're performing, it is you and a guitar, isn't it? You know, so
well,
pretty well.
That's the way I made it made it work the way I made it pay.
Yeah.
You know, Steve, I simply couldn't. I wouldn't have been able to have had a full-time career for 38 years now if I'd had to pay you know, the bills of 3 other guys as well. Or
no, I'm not saying you. I'm not.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean in the sense that, you know, it's not a band. I mean, it's kind of stripped down stuff. You know, it is just kind of raw stuff that, you know, and that's, I think, for me, why your stuff works so well, actually.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we try to do that when we make records, to try and keep that at the front, because I recognize that sometimes, you know, I have to make. I do a lot of acoustic recordings, but I have to. And want to make studio and experiment and see where we can take the music. But the strange thing is, Steve, that in any gig, never, ever, ever has anyone come up to me and said, you'd be better off with a band. Not once in 38 years, because I just seem to have developed the skills and the ability to be able to reach out, no matter what size the audience, you know, in big festivals or whatever it might be, and just be able to deliver something with myself and the guitar, by making it percussive, by making it different tones and all sorts of things. But just by having a certain amount of glue that worked, and even when signed to CBS or Sony in the early 90s, they put a great band around me, went out, played some shows, and everyone went, you know, it's better when you're on your own. You know?
They tell the band that.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had Pete Thomas from Elvis Costello on drums. You know,
wow.
I mean, it was
a fantastic drummer.
They were great. They were fantastic. It wasn't that, but I think at that point, without sounding conceited, it was another band. Whereas on my own, there was always something that I could do that was just perhaps a little unique. I don't know, not for me to say, but it worked out well, and I enjoy playing with other musicians. Don't get me wrong, but I know I can go out there and do it on my own.
I'm desperately trying to think of that guy who I saw support you. I think he might have been Canadian. When you played at St. David's Hall, met him after the gig, and he was a wonderful musician. Did some lovely stuff on I think he was a ukulele.
Willie Porter. He's American. Yeah,
so I'm sorry. Yeah, is he North American? I don't know.
Yeah. He's from Wisconsin. Yeah.
Because I love that idea that he came over here. He supported you in the UK, and then you swapped when you went over to the States, which is a nice idea. But with Willie Porter stuff, I absolutely loved that performance. And then I was a little bit disappointed. I find it difficult to just find just him and his guitar, because that's, again, for me, the thing that worked. And it was quite sort of heavily kind of orchestrated and produced, you know?
Yeah, I've had that discussion with Billy.
Okay, all right.
And in fact, every Saturday night, he does a show from his studio online right now, and it's just him and a guitar, and that's my favorite version of Willie Porter too. So he's great with a band, but I do feel like sometimes his records are a little overproduced, and I encouraged him to do something a little bit more stripped back. So he put out a live acoustic album, so you could track that down. I think you'd find what you were looking for, because he's an absolute genius, and as a guitar player, makes me want to simply retire and go and become
he's an unbelievable player, isn't he? You know, he's just unbelievable. I mean, I think he did with the ukulele. Was it ukulele? I think he did. He just
it was my
crazy tune and stuff.
Yeah, it was my tenor guitar.
Little tiny guitar. Yeah, he did amazing.
This one.
Yeah,
it was this guitar. Whoop.
Hey,
sorry, that's me attached to the camera. It was this little 4-string.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, it's bigger than I thought. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it only looks big on your screen. It is kind of little, but it's a little 4-string. That's So I'll put that down there so I don't.
Right. 4-string. Yeah, of course. That's why I thought. That's why I thought. Yeah. What's it called? Baritone ukulele or whatever. But it's not. It's obviously not.
It's a tenor guitar.
Now, I don't know whether we did talk. Maybe another time we'll talk to you about, if you can, about we were quite interested in, Tony's quite interested in setting up something on the website called like a gear guru. And so maybe talk about your kind of live setup and your studio setup, but I don't know whether we could maybe.
Well, I can do that.
I would love to come back to Martyn again
because we love working with Martyn. We can't get enough Martyn, really, so it's always good.
And he's got some great guitars as well.
Hasn't got any Martyns? Have you got any Martyns, Martyn?
I've got one upstairs. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9, 10 guitars in the studio here, but there's another 3 or 4 outside in other rooms.
Wow.
So
Okay.
and there's others in storage space. So
Think about 20 guitars, maybe.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that enough?
They're all needed.
Yeah. Okay.
They all do really good jobs.
Okay. And we'll talk about it again. We use Loudons quite a lot, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My main guitar here. Let me just carry this time.
Okay.
This is my main my main Loudon guitar, which is
handmade for you.
It's the Richard Thompson signature model, but I had it modified by George. The neck sort of made slightly thinner, and I had an ebony top put on the top of it there because I just like the black ebony there. But beautiful guitar. This is
gorgeous
spruce top, cedar top, and a Mexican begins with a Z. Zeracotta.
Wow. Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Lovely.
So,
you're a lucky man.
Yeah, and I've even got out there in my lounge my original Loudon, which is the most beat up guitar you'll ever see in your life. So that doesn't go out on the road anymore. But,
do you still get excited when you get a new guitar? Do you still get that kind of thing?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a sweet shop. You know, you go into.
I love the smell. You know. New guitar. You know.
Yeah, going to PMT Music in in Cardiff there or wherever, and I can't walk past the guitar store, so I go in, and you're always just looking for something that is there a song in this guitar? Because if there's one great song in there, it's worth trying to think about buying it, you know. But I try not to be, you know, it can get crazy. So as I say, I own about 20 guitars. I think through a career of 38 years, that's probably quite mild. I know there are people who don't even play guitar for a living who have far more guitars than that.
Yeah, including Tony. Actually, I think Tony's got
Tony's
ridiculous,
the one.
crazy amounts of guitars. Talking about every guitar having a song, you have a brand new song, and it's kind of about. I'm not sure whether we would be better. We can try, but I'm not sure we get good enough audio quality in it for you. But we could certainly give it a try. And what was interesting with this song when you sent it through, I try and remember. Is it When We Get Through This? That's it.
When we get through this, yeah. We're releasing it as a double A side next week. Yeah. With a video that we've asked fans to put in.
Tell me about the video part of it. That's quite interesting. Looking at kind of clips and sound bites and stuff.
Yeah, well, we asked. Obviously, everyone's in isolation, so it's difficult. But we just said, you know, send us clips of what's getting you through right now, or symbols of how you are seeing the world, whatever it might be. So we had hundreds of video applications and photos, and I sat here in the studio 2 days ago and went through each and put some in the good box, some in the maybe box and all that, and we've now sent that off to some poor guy called Jojo who works for Cartel Music, and he's trying to put together this video in the next 2 or 3 days for it to be released next week. And it's double A side. I've re-recorded my nice song about Nye Bevan and the NHS.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. And by the way, can I just to say, Martyn, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for a really good reason. I mean, just to say thank you very much for as you know, near me, the local hospital, the local hospital near me, we're closing down their A&E department, and I know the people were really keen to work with you with that song Nye, because it says everything, and you very kindly agreed to that. So thank you.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. So yeah, we're just putting this out with this brand new song that I wrote just 2 weeks ago. Wrote it and we've recorded it. I sent a file to this, you know, a great producer friend of mine, Jerry, who played fiddle on it and stuff.
I was going to ask you about that because it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, he really plays violin in a very different way, so I played everything else, but he put that on it, and we just put this track together. And
tell us about the lyrics in the song then, and how did the song come about? And were you sitting at the garden or on a walk or something? How did it come about? And what's the song?
Yeah. I did go for, as I say, I'm fortunate where I live. I can go for walks in quite isolation in a forest, and I came back. And usually I just had, you know, when we get through this, what's it going to be like, you know? And so I go to my book and I just write a few notes down and ideas. And I didn't want to write. I mean, the problem is with these things, you can write something that's quite, I don't know, sentimental and twee, shall we say, without meaning to, and so you've got to be very careful. Certainly what I tried to be anyway within this, but I also had a very good friend who'd lost someone, There'd been so much tragedy in this person's life. I wanted to write something that was personal to them. That comes at the end of the song. But I wanted to keep it kind of a tough song, as and I wanted to address some of the issues. So I felt that we'd had some catastrophic events like 9/11 and various things through the last few decades, where there was a chance for us to turn a corner, shall we say, and to really react in a way that would actually really change the world. And I think that this is one of those moments again, and we'll see, what happens at the end of it. So lyrics like, when we get through this, we'll walk out a little closer together, a little further from doubt. When we get through this, when we lift the shroud, when we ring the bells, the music will seem so loud, that everything will be so much more meaningful.
Yeah.
We'll break bread and wine, no lies and twisted words, but the truth this time. A reference to guess who. When we get through this, when we finish the song, it won't be left versus right, but right versus wrong. I've been thinking about you every day, thinking about you. When we get through this, when all is done, you'll count your enemies and you won't find one. Hopefully this will bring us closer together. When we get through this, the heroes in name, may peace be upon them, let it not be in vain. Thanking the people that are, and then coming back to my friend at the end, when we get through this, you will not despair. That's a line from a Dylan Thomas poem.
Okay.
He wrote when he was 16 years old.
Wow.
So that's how poetry influences.
Yeah.
When we get through this, you will not despair. All the love that remains will carry you there. You've got this. I know you do. We're holding on for you when we get through this. So there was a bit more personal at the end in terms of the individual, but I was trying to make some grand statements about the possibilities of how we could use this moment to come out and really, really change an awful lot about the way, after all, we've been able to suddenly find all this money to help, and it begs the question that, if we can do it within this, why can't we do it within that?
Yeah. Very, very good point. When is the official release on this?
Well, I think it's going to be next Tuesday, so or Monday or Tuesday of next week. What are we?
Oh wow, great
Thursday.
timing then.
So yeah, we're nearly there. So yeah, hopefully very, very shortly. It's just literally we're the music's gone, it's all there, and that will be released I think Monday of next week, and then the video should hopefully be there by then as well.
And you're very well connected these days. I mean, obviously you've been you've had your own label for a number of years now, but I know you've got a lot of friends in the radio industry. Is this a good time in which to try and get music accepted in the radio industry? Does it change anything in that way, or
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. You're the only guy I know in the radio industry. I don't know, but that stuff, it's always a bit of a struggle, I mean, the folk show on Radio 2 are very kind to me. They played Nye the other night. And hopefully we'll get some plays out of this, but there's always that restraint between, radio stations needing to entertain people and so a song like Nye, it's a political song. It says some things, and not all radio stations are comfortable with playing that sort of material, but we'll certainly try.
Are you still there, Martyn?
Sorry, my mother's trying to ring me.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Well, we'll get out the way and let you.
That's fine. You're
fine. Speak to your mother.
We speak about 8 times a day. It's all
okay.
Cool.
I was going to say one thing with the Nye thing. Obviously, I mean, with all that's going on now, I suppose in both ways, really. Getting through this and Nye Bevan and the NHS, you really kind of totally, I would say, arguably sort of captured the zeitgeist, really. This is absolutely where we are at. And if you're saying about things changing as a result of this, for God's sake, if it doesn't change now, it kind of never will, So I would hope that this stuff transcends that other stuff and the meaningful stuff gets out there,
Ah, that would be great. That would be great, Steve. Yeah, I mean, I did, the Nye song was written some 3 years ago now, so, but it's just,
so
it's
now,
about, Exactly, and it's it's a tribute to the it says it literally thanks nurses and doctors and porters and everybody for everything they do, and we will need to do that in abundance and be grateful and get our priorities right in terms of what is important in the future. So if a little song and an acoustic guitar can push that forward a nano inch, then that'd be wonderful.
Well, Martyn, talking about getting priorities right, I think you should ring your mum, really. So
I'll tell you said that.
Thanks a million again. Always great to speak to you, and look after yourself. Stay well, and we can catch up again, and we can help you. Plug the singles and whatever you do, and we're always happy to help you.
Well, thanks.
And
thanks to
also,
you.
No, you're very welcome.
I was going to say thanks to you and Tony for doing this. It's great,
no
I hope it grows and grows, and I'll be too small for you to interview in the future. You'll just have megastars.
I don't think we'll have to worry about that for a number of decades. But, we may well come back.
You won't take my phone call soon. I know.
We'd love to talk to you again at some point if you have time about your kind of your gear stuff and the way you said
we'll do that.
Do things in a particular way. But for now, Martyn, I'll leave you with your mum. Thanks very much. Great to talk to you, and see you soon. Cheers.
Thanks, Martyn.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Tony.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.